Hello and welcome to the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You could tweet me at rbowlesbyjr. You could tweet the Greater STL Sports Network at Greater STLSN. And you can also find us on Facebook at the Greater STL Sports Network. Alright, we'll get into some stadium talk. We'll talk about professional sports in Las Vegas. We'll talk a little bit about the Sunday ticket. We'll change it up. We'll talk some wrestling in the final segment after we talk the hometown rundown. But if it's been for so many weeks now, and it's because it's the only thing that's going on, and while last week was hard, this week's not going to be any funner. But we'll start it off with the Cardinals. And you might have been disappointed at the All-Star game because you didn't get to see the Cardinals really get involved. Molina and Peralta with hits. Peralta get with the game-tying hit early in the game to tie the game at 1. But you didn't see the Wakas. You didn't see the Martinezes. You're probably really glad you didn't see the struggling Trevor Rosenthal. But if you watched that, if you were a Cardinal fan, it was fun to watch the game. But you kind of wanted to see the Cardinals get in it. But it looks like with the Cardinals told Bruce Bochy about not getting them in there, actually helped the Cardinals out a lot in the long run. As in yesterday's game, in the 18-inning game, Carlos Martinez got the loss, but he had to come out and pitch 4 innings because Matheny used up the whole bullpen before that. The only guy that was left before Martinez was Rosenthal. And usually you don't throw your closer in them late inning games. Definitely at home. But you gotta, and you're really now, and to make good sports talk radio, you always gotta look for the bad things, or sports talk blog, or whatever you want to insinuate this is. You're gonna look for some negative, because positivity isn't always the funnest thing. So you're kind of nitpicking with some bullpen things. And you've seen Villanueva get out there and do some long relief work. But after that, you're kind of lost on that long relief thing. And I know that everybody's been harping on it. You need another pitcher. You need another pitcher. I mean, you really need somebody that can go out there and get you that long roll. I thought that was kind of going to be Greenwood's thing, but they sent him down immediately after the All-Star game and brought Holiday back off the DL. But you're kind of glad that the Cardinals did what they did at the All-Star game, because it was really needed for them guys not to pitch, to not waste a day. And now you're going to need them both in Waka to move up a day on his start. And then Martinez has to skip his start because he basically started in the 18-inning game. Which also only throwing the 4 innings, even though they were high-stress innings, you're kind of saving innings with that, and also skipping the start saves innings. So it was almost kind of a win-win with the All-Star game and what happened yesterday, if you look at it from that sense. Now, you never want to lose a game, but you definitely don't want to lose an 18-inning game. But you really don't have nobody in that bullpen that you can look at and say, and really after Villanueva, that you can go out and get 2 innings from. And it's part Mike Matheny's fault with the way he's used guys like Seth Maness, overworking Kevin Segras. But after that, there's nobody, like, you don't really think that a Sokolovich is a guy to go out there and get you 2 or more innings. Tuilawa, you don't think about that either. And then Choate shouldn't even be in this conversation, as he's one batter and out the door. But you got to kind of say, in a way, it's Matheny's fault, the way he's used this bullpen and put a lot of stress on it. And they've done a good job of switching guys in and out. Hadley's been up. Harris. You had Belial for a while, who's coming back. You had Walden there, who was coming back. So you've lost kind of your depth there with losing certain pitchers at certain times. But the depth that you've had from the minor leagues, you haven't used as well. I mean, Hadley, came up and pitched one game. Harris seemed like he was in the back burner forever until he finally got in and then started the struggle. And, I mean, it was just, and I talked about it at the time, but I don't understand where happened to Mitch Harris, and then he came back and he started allowing runs. I don't understand what they expected. He was in a zone, and you kind of took him out of that zone by kind of making him that back-end guy in the back of the bullpen. But, I mean, you're at a loss for who you're going to get. You're kind of happy about this Tim Cooney thing. That he's shown he could stretch out. He pitched 100 pitches yesterday. And he could go he could be some really good trade bait out there right now. Definitely being a left-handed starting pitcher. Because he's pitched 5 or 6 starts and only got lit up that first one. He's got an ERA of, I think it was 3.33. So, just more prospects building in the wing. Kind of a guy you knew about him, but you didn't expect him to come in and kind of take over that 5th starter spot so soon in the season. But he's starting to get you some trade value. But what if he is that kind of 6th starter guy that you want to keep around? Definitely being a left-hander, even though you got Jaime in there. Well, if they're expecting to maybe see a Carlos Martinez or Michael Wacha hard-throwing right-handers, and you throw not a soft tossing, but not a 95, 96 guy like them two are, but you throw a 90-mile-per-hour fastball guy like Cooney out there, it's going to mess up the hitter's rhythm when they've been watching video on these certain guys. The problem is a lot of that stuff kind of leaks out of what's going to happen, what a team's going to do, because you got all these people, they got all these sources, and they're around the team 24/7. Some of that stuff kind of leaks out early. I mean, but the Cardinals do a pretty good job of keeping what's going around their team pretty quiet. But maybe he's just that 6th starter guy to where you don't have to lose talent. Maybe he's more talented than we're all thinking because we've only seen him 5 or 6 times. And you don't want to use him as trade bait right now. He's that 6th starter. He gets you to the playoffs. He gets you long relief help in the playoffs if you need it. Even though you're going to only use 3 or 4 guys, so there's an extra starter right there. Maybe even 2. But something where you don't have to give out quality talent for a less quality player. And I know that people hate Tyler Lyons, but he's come up here plenty of times and stabilized the rotation when we really needed help. Another guy was Greenwood last year who did it out of the bullpen, piggybacking a guy we needed to step up in Marco. So, you got to look at it in a sense as giving up a guy like Cooney hurt the Cardinals in the long run when you got guys like Lackey and Jaime who are in contract years. Or do you really need another pitcher or even another hitter in this lineup? So, there's a lot of situations away with the Cardinals. Definitely being in this situation they're in, being the best team in baseball. And a lot of people just want to go and blow something up. And it does get worse with the struggles of Carpenter, who's one of your catalysts of the lineup. The people are going to want more from this lineup. But you're not going to go get a world beater third baseman and then really want to make Matt Carpenter your everyday first baseman. I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, if you went and got like a guy like Tulo and put him at short or third, or Peralta at third, and moved Carpenter at first, that sounds like a more logical thing if you had that chance. But that's not a guy that's coming up. So I don't know if the Cardinals want to go get a guy like people mentioned Longoria now, since he's kind of lost his thunder and maybe going somewhere else, rejuvenates his career. Some people talk about a Ramos Marinez, who would probably play first base if he was here. But do we know how good defensively he is there? So I really don't know what people expect to get by blowing the best team in baseball up, right? Blowing them up. Blowing the best team in baseball up. By getting rid of talented prospects at a time where a lot of teams are moving in that route to keep the prospects, not wanting to sign a 36-year-old John Lackey to a big deal, not wanting to sign a Jaime Garcia, who's hurt all the time, to a big long-term deal. So guys like Cooney and Lyons, and even to an extent Greenwood, not only fill out your staff this year, but you got to look into later years. Because if the Cardinals go out, you know they're going to have to pay Walker Martinez in the long run. But if the Cardinals go out and get somebody in your free agency, you're going to want it to be a hitter. Just something to stabilize this lineup. But the problem is you read a column from Bernie and they just don't seem like they're at that stage at all either way. Bernie wrote in his column about it's time to stop saying we don't want to block Adams no more. He didn't have the stats when he left. But the Cardinals keep saying we don't want to block him to give him his chance back at first base. I mean, sometimes you gotta move on to get better. Alan Craig and Joe Kelly. Albert Pujols. The Scott Rowlands, Jim Edmonds. Another guy that the Cardinals got rid of that I talk about a lot, Ray Langford, when he was traded for Woody Williams. Sometimes you gotta let go of things to get better. And the Cardinals usually know this kind of thing. But maybe they're thinking he's a little too young to be putting stuff like this in his head, so we're going to keep building him up until we have to make a choice on what to do with Adams. Because if right now you don't have your first baseman, unless what was reported today actually comes to fruition. And one thing we try to do here is give the people that come out with these stories credit where their credit is due, and that's going to be Rob Raines of St. Louis sportspage.com, I'm pretty sure is the website, stlouisportspage.com, and he reported that the Cardinals were going to bring up Stephen Piscotty before they started their series on Tuesday with the Chicago White Sox. There was also other reports that if you went on the Cardinals' 25-man roster on the website, the Tommy Pham was no longer on the website. So it looks like a lot of people's happiness will come true. But see, I have been back and forth on Piscotty, and I've claimed a lot of stats for him. And it kind of bothers me, but that they move him to first base, and I know he's been the guy. He's been the number one prospect after you brought Tavares up and lost him in that tragic car accident, that he was the guy, the next guy to be up. But the Cardinals then in the minor leagues moved him to first base this year to maybe he would give him an easier way to get up to the major leagues by not crowding an already crowded outfield. Now, as a right-handed hitter, as Stephen Piscotty is, you would think that maybe the Cardinals are going to bring him up with the struggles of Mark Reynolds. But if you look at some of his stats, other than his average, I mean, he's kind of looking like the same guy. You want a right-hander to come up to hit better against left-handers. Then you have your left-handed backup to hit better against right-handers. Well, he's a right-handed hitter, only hitting .223 in the minors this year off lefties. Now, I understand that he's shown the power. Over the last month, he's batted .308. But it's just kind of funny, right before he comes up, he kind of goes in a power slump over the last 10 games, only the 1 home run. So, I mean, I'm happy that they're giving a guy a chance. But this seems kind of funny that we never gave Xavier Scruggs a chance. And I don't know if that has anything, how they feel about Xavier Scruggs or Stephen Piscotty. But you gave the kid the smallest amount of chance, and he produced there for a second, but then faded off. Now, I don't know if the Cardinals are just trying to give these guys their little cup of coffee and then see what they got, and then when they're no longer useful to the Cardinals, they send them back down. But if you look at the minor league stats of Xavier Scruggs since coming back, it hasn't been good. But then with a guy like Piscotty kind of taking over that first baseman spot, it's kind of hard to know what they wanted to expect from Scruggs. He's been down there. He's only hit 143 after his last month or so, and he does have a lower average versus right-handers, but 203. But how much are they going to give Stephen Piscotty a chance if they didn't give a guy who produced there for 2 or 3 games or so a chance? I mean, have they finally realized it's time to give somebody else a chance? Or is this going to be another revolving door to where Scruggs and Piscotty and Dan Johnson and whomever kind of make a back and forth thing? Now, the big thing that I preached last week is get a corner outfielder that can play first base. And that's what you're bringing up at Piscotty, so maybe that's what they're looking at. Because that gives your holiday breaks, but also keeps Grichuk in the everyday lineup. And the only thing that Randall Grichuk has to do is just keep down the strikeouts, and he's all good. I mean, he proved it again with 2 home runs in the 12-2 game the Cardinals played Saturday. He's got some pop. And he's able to hit for average at times. It's just the strikeouts at this point in time. But I mean, it just seems that sometimes that maybe the Matheny is either getting too much help or not getting enough help. And I went and looked through his coaching staff today. And even though you got guys in there that have minor league experience, maybe managing or anything like that, there's not a lot of major league coaches on this roster. I mean, your 2 bullpen coaches who probably help you, Blake Isley and Jamie Pogue, this is their first shot at a major league team. And really everybody on this roster, Chris Maloney, who he's been here for a few years, this is his first shot. Jose Akindo's been here for 16 years as third base coach, but was his first shot. And then John Mabry, David Bell, your assistant hitting coach, Bill Mueller, who had a little bit of major league experience, interim hitting coach for the Dodgers in 2007, but that's hitting. not really a guy that had to go out there and manage an everyday roster. And I know a lot of these guys stick together, and it's kind of a fraternity of managers and a fraternity of players and all that. But do you maybe need to bring in a guy just to kind of keep Matheny from going off the deep end sometimes? Because a lot of these guys are guys that just got in the game, so they're going to be yes men to Mozeliak and to Matheny. And I'm not saying you're going to bring in a guy that's going to come in and just change the whole thing and say, you can't do this, Mike, and you can't do this, Derek. But just a guy to give him a different idea of maybe what to do in certain situations. But it's not like injuries have put Matheny in the best spot. So you have to look at that in a sense too, to make it think that maybe he's doing what he can with what he has. And when all these teams get healthy, and like Mozeliak said, when these guys start getting healthy, it's going to be like going out there and making a trade. And he's kind of right. You get an eighth inning guy to stabilize an overworked bullpen. You get a guy that you know can pitch a little bit more long relief than Belial. And I'm not saying Jay's this great player or nothing, but he comes back and he has proven he could be a good pitch hitter. So just something off the bench to help you out while you ain't got nothing. And then maybe you have that little pop off the bench at times with either Matheny or Piscotty. So it's maybe going a little overboard, and I know I said this, to think that the Cardinals need to do anything drastic to make this team better at all this season. Definitely you just look at the record, even though you're not playing in the best of divisions, but you've played against some really good teams of late. The Cubs have been on fire. Pittsburgh's been on fire. The Mets, people are going to say the Mets. Well, if you look at that pitching staff, the Mets are going to win some games over the years just based on their pitching. And I don't know who they're going to give up to get better players in that lineup. But I would probably give up Wheeler just because he's already had the injury, and you never know when that kind of stuff might creep up again. There are players out there with more than one Tommy John surgery. So is it worth keeping a guy like that around and investing in him, and something like that happens, when you could sell high and get as much profit as you want? But don't look at every situation so bad in Cardinal land. And that's what people are going to do. It's going to be up and down. It's just the nature of the beast. So, with Piscotty coming up, you got to kind of hope that they give him a chance and kind of let Reynolds be that guy to spell Holiday, to spell Carpenter, because Carpenter's struggling, and be that pop off the bench as things progress throughout the season. Now, something that's funny that happened in that 18-inning game yesterday was Keith Hernandez, who's in the Mets broadcast booth and is also a former Cardinal. If you remember right, he was one of the guys that good old Whitey Herzog got rid of because he was supposedly doing coke in the locker room and all that, and Keith Hernandez got to go to the band of Misfits with Doc Gooden and Darryl Strawberry and all that. But if people were posted from the Mets broadcast, and I could only find these videos on Vine, and I don't really have the equipment to play them back to back to back, so I didn't want to wait and maybe have to go through ads or anything to play them. But there was points in time where Keith Hernandez, at one time, after a pop-up of runners on, said, I asked if he could have a whiskey on air. He then later said in the game that this was his worst nightmare. Another quote from Mr. Keith Hernandez is, "This has been an exercise in futility to a large degree. I feel like it's Groundhog Day, the same old bad movie, just reruns and reruns." And then probably the funniest one, because it almost puts St. Louis to a T, and then he kind of made a little bit of fun of it. But a good old gentleman Hoosier decided to sleep in the stands during the game. And Mr. Hernandez told his broadcast partner that he would actually want to switch seats with that guy to not have to worry about this game, which his broadcaster partner responded with, "Well, we can get you out there to see how comfortable them seats are." So sometimes it's hard on fans, sometimes it's hard on players, and sometimes this proves it's hard on broadcasters. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back with, we'll start off with some stadium talk and then go into some sports in Las Vegas after the break. This is the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Hello and welcome back to the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You can tweet me at rbowlesbyjr. You can tweet the Greater STL Sports Network at Greater STLSN. Well, the NFL came to St. Louis this week in a meeting with Jay Nixon, Dave Peacock, Blitz, Kevin Dimoff, one of the developers representatives, that's HOK, and the Goldman Sachs group who's financing the deal. Which is just a little funny to me that, if you didn't know, Goldman Sachs is the company that's owned by Chargers owner and another guy vying for Los Angeles Stadium in Dean Spanos. So nice to see that his company's doing a little helping out, trying to help us out with the stadium. Now, the meeting was a 4-hour meeting, and it entailed, the points of emphasis anyways, were the stadium financing, the updates on the stadium design, land acquisition, and it also entailed the preliminary outline of a prospective lease agreement that would either be given to the Rams or any other potential NFL team. And now this ain't the first time that Grubman has met with Peacock and Blitz. He met back when the NFL meetings went on, and he's also came to St. Louis another time. But I wonder what Kevin Dimoff's doing at these meetings. And I'll get to a little more stadium stuff in a second. It's not really much that's going on. But is he being Stan Kroenke's little snitch? You know, going back or is he really, really trying to help us with trying to get this stadium going? It's just kind of weird. Do you think it... I mean, I would think it's weird if I was Peacock, Dave Peacock, or Bob Blitz, and I walk into a meeting with the NFL, and the owner's right-hand man is walking right alongside with you. And Kevin Dimoff doesn't seem like an argumentative type of guy. He kind of seems like he sits in the background, makes his appearances, says what he has to say, and gets the hell on out of there. So he's probably at this meeting more like a background spectator, but he's part of it, of course, being the Rams CFO or whatever he is. But it must be funny to see that Stan Kroenke's Bobo is walking right next to the guys that are trying to keep football here, while the guy that's trying to keep football out is bringing you in it. But don't think this is such a big... I mean, this is a big deal that they're meeting with officials. There were actually 3 other NFL officials along with Grubman at the meeting. But there's just so much going on with all this, with the lawsuits. Do the people have to vote? Do the people not have to vote? How much money does this make? How much money does that make? And it's kind of funny how the Rams are kind of going at it. Well, not the Rams, but the Jay Nixon team and all that, saying the Rams aren't the ones that even bring the money here. It's the conventions. It's not the Rams. The conventions are the one that actually brings the money to the convention center in the Edward Jones Dome. So they're making you look at it a different way. Like, no, we're not saying that the Rams do this. But if you build this new stadium and have the Rams just play here, just think how much more money you could have just over here. And that brings in twice as much of the money. And that's the best way to really explain it. Because after you go through all the dome debts and blah blah and all the stuff to help to keep the rehab up on the dome, it's probably about an even trade. So it's not, it's just another way to look at it, and it's another report to give to the NFL saying, hey, if we get this other stadium and you keep this right here, this is our plans for the future, and this is how we're going to get financing plans going and all that. So, I mean, that's probably, and another thing you could bring to the judges and say, hey, you know, this is kind of what we're giving to you. We're telling you that you are right. That the Rams aren't bringing the money that maybe you want them to bring in just to extend the bonds or make the bonds go a little higher per year. Basically what they're saying is, if you build this other stadium, look at that revenue, and then look at the revenue we could bring in, not having to harbor the 10 games a year, and really the whole stadium being out of commission for over 6 months. And really not at the Rams, really 4.5, 5 months. You're not making it to the playoffs anytime soon. Well, at least not anytime recently. But it's just another thing to give to the judges. Just another way to put a positive spin on what would happen to the comedy if you brought that stadium here. Now, it's not going to be this big old boost, and it's not going to reinvigorate downtown like they want to say, but it could be a start to something different. If you bring more money in, if you got the arch grounds going, and then you put this plaza in next to the stadium, and you bring in businesses to work with the Rams that come here only because you have NFL football here. So, I don't think that you can really trust on everything that happens, or trust anything that the NFL says, in a sense that they're going to follow the money. Because it's a money-making sport. It's a revenue-generated sport. Definitely when you're paying your commissioner $40 million a year. But things like this just keep building up the stairway to a Rams team in the future. Or an NFL football team. Not just the Rams, another NFL football team in the future. Because you're keeping on good terms with your city government. You're keeping on good terms with the NFL. And you're proving that you want your team here, even though it seems like that a lot of the people don't. So, it wasn't a big story that they came out and just had a meeting. But it's just something else to be happy about, that the meetings are even still going on. So, hopefully these kind of meetings keep football in St. Louis, because that's what I want at least, and I hope that most of the people listening to this show want. Before we get into that little Las Vegas thing I was talking about, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I told you was going to happen. What's already kind of been tried before, and that's the DirecTV NFL Sunday team thing ticket is being sued. I told you earlier in the year when the NHL got sued and for the same thing, which is making sports fans buy a whole package of hockey games or football games instead of just buying the individual game for their favorite team. Now, this is from the AP out of San Francisco. DirecTV exclusive right to broadcast certain NFL games is an illegal monopoly that raises the cost for bars and restaurants, a San Francisco bar owner says in a lawsuit against the league and the satellite television provider. The lawsuit filed this week in federal court in California challenges DirecTV's deal with the league for the NFL Sunday ticket, which gives subscribers nationwide live broadcast of many Sunday NFL games played in other cities. Those games are available to the subscribers only through DirecTV. The lawsuit by the bar, Ninth Inning Incorporation, says the deal stifles competition by preventing other TV providers such as Dish Network from airing the games. It also means individual teams don't have to compete to get their game broadcast in markets outside their home cities. DirecTV's arrangement with the NFL allows the defendants to restrict the output and raise the prices for the live broadcast of NFL Sunday afternoon out-of-market games, the lawsuit says. The suit seeks class action status on behalf of other bars and restaurants that subscribe to Sunday ticket, monetary damages, and a court order forbidding the exclusive deal. You're not getting damages. That's you paid for it. That's your problem. You're not getting damages back, but you might get the exclusive deal non-exclusive. Calls to the NFL and DirecTV were, of course, immediately not returned. Bars and restaurants must show these games to effectively run their business, the lawsuit contends. A restaurant with a fire code opportunity between 51 and 100 people will pay a little more than $2,300 for Sunday ticket in 2015, according to the suit. Last month, football fans filed their own antitrust lawsuit in federal court in California, seeking to end DirecTV's requirement that customers buy all games if they want to see their favorite teams. And it's something that you're surprised it happened sooner, because you know how we are as a society. We're always trying to find the easy way out, something that makes our lives easier. Now, I don't understand the concept of that lawsuit by saying that because DirecTV can raise their prices year after year after year, and the NFL doesn't have these kind of games on DirecTV or anything like, or Dish TV, excuse me, Dish Network or Charter or blah blah blah. It's an illegal deal. It's costing them money. But if Dish got that, their price would just go up. Charter the same way. Dish has their exclusive NFL Red Zone package deal thingy. And I'm sure Charter has something running with some of them. But it would be nice that if you were in a different city and just had to buy maybe a package for the Rams, or maybe old people that in St. Louis that want to watch the Cardinals even though they're not here anymore, or people that came here from other cities, Indianapolis, Chicago, anywhere like that, that they want to watch their individual team and not have to pay for these other 12 or so games that aren't on TV every week, or 10 or so, anything like that. So these things are going to keep happening until basically it's all monetized one by one, which means you pay for this package of Rams games, you pay for this package of San Francisco games. You buy the packages separate, or maybe there's a cheaper way to bundle them up, something like what Hulu's doing with Showtime, which I'm not a big TV show picker outer watcher, and I know this is getting off topic, but that Shameless show is something else. And I don't know what works with these British shows that come over, The Office being another one, where our humor is lost and we gain it from the Britons. Maybe because they're our mother country. Maybe we're late to the sense of humor game because they already had it. They're just bringing it back to us. But man, that is a great show. And even though everything that happens bad, almost every episode, something happens bad. The last one I watched, they're digging on the old lady that the dad Frank's collecting checks from that's been buried in the backyard for 14 years. I mean, it's just an awesome show. It's something I would recommend to watch. But when I was getting at in that whole situation, I got off topic. Like Hulu and Showtime bundle themselves together. You pay the $8.99 for Hulu and the $8.99 for Showtime. Where Showtime anywhere else is, I think, $12, just like the HBO. So you'll probably see something where they'll say you want to package the Ram, Indy, and let's say Arizona Cardinals, and you get this kind of deal from it. So this is something to look at when maybe you have to pick out a new TV package soon. And I don't know when these are all going to end. And it's going to take a long time, but it's something that was going to be figured out and monetized anyways. And there's probably a better way for the NFL to make money off it by singling out every game. Now with the recent reports of the Arizona Coyotes may be looking into moving to Las Vegas, even though the NHL and one of the Coyotes for officials quickly shut that town. Just kind of wanted to go over it. Just kind of look at what's going on over in Las Vegas. And now you know what the big thing is. It's the betting on the sports, which happens in certain states. But some of them states already have football teams. Delaware is one of them. And I know Baltimore, but Baltimore's right there. In the surrounding areas. I know it's Baltimore, Maryland. And then you kind of got close to Oregon with Seattle, and also down with all the California teams. And then a guy like Christie, who's all about sports betting, and right next to one of the biggest markets in the world, in New York City. Now the famed AEG, who's been trying to build a stadium out in California for an LA team for so long, teamed up with the MGM Resorts International, and they're right now building an arena in Las Vegas to house any kind of events, including basketball and hockey. Now it's a $350 million stadium, 20,000 seats. I think it was 19,100 for basketball, 17,000 for hockey. It's set to open April 20 2016. The UFC has been promised, according to Damon Wright, the first sporting event at the new arena, July 2nd, 2016, and is being built in hopes of an NHL expansion team. Also building with the stadium, which is the new thing, it will include a $100 million retail and dining leading up to the arena on the Las Vegas Strip in Paradise, Nevada. The problem is, could sports even work in an area like Nevada? So if you compare it to its only other close relative, kind of with the deserts and all, that's Arizona. And now it said that Las Vegas was the 41st, market in the nation. Now that's going to be hard to promote TV revenues. Definitely with the sports being in the nightlife in a town that's supposedly built off nightlife. Now they do have a population of 583,000 plus, and very easily could support a sports team. But you have to worry about the gambling. Now, you would think that many commissioners would be all for it. Most would be against it. David Stern was exclusively against it. But his replacement is not. And that's Adam Silver, who's spoken about this many times. But he said back in April on, first with the Broomer and Carlton show, then also with the New York Times, that I did speak with other commissioners on sports betting. Some were, what are you doing? Others were, let's study it. Seems like an interesting idea. And that is not that we're out here necessarily promoting sports betting, but that the latest estimate is that somewhere between 300 million and 400 billion a year is being bet on sports in the United States. Silver knows that sports betting is going to happen regardless of what the league does. He just wants to be able to protect the league's integrity and monitor the gambling. Adding that he studied European soccer and European basketball, where betting is widespread and legal. In Europe, what they do is they monetize it. They get all the data sent to them, and if there's any kind of blimp in the record, they're going right at it. They're investigating it like that. Silver also said it's good for business. I don't want to hide from that fact. We all know if you have a gentleman's bet or a $5 bet with your friend on a game, all of a sudden the game's a lot more interesting. And if you really think about it, if you legalize some of these sports, it would get a lot more interesting. People would drone to some of these major sports that don't get all the recognition. Soccer, tennis, golf, all that. Maybe even you look at like a sport like baseball that's losing some of its ratings. You think people wouldn't want to bet on games of baseball? I mean, you think people wouldn't want to be watching more baseball if they had a money on it? Based what he said, a gentleman's bet. But if you had big money on it and you had real money on it, they can make you real money. Now, in a lot of sites, I mean, it's like the draft day thing. And that's kind of why I wanted to kind of talk about this. You see all these sports leagues that they're getting behind these fantasy leagues, one-day fantasy leagues, which is you're almost just betting. You're still betting, but you're betting on single players instead of betting on the whole team. And you've seen the destruction that happened with the betting sites like Full Tilt and Poker Stars and all that. But they didn't have the backing of some of these sponsors. I think FanDuel is working with ESPN. You see, if you go to a Blues game, DraftKings is everywhere. There's still a bunch of other leagues that come around. You can scroll down on Twitter and half the promotions are one-day fantasy sport leagues. And now they're getting out of hand to where you're betting for MMA, you're betting for golf, you're betting for anything. Even Bovada's got it to where you're betting on the scores at halftime and things like that. So I don't see how it would be beneficial. I don't see why they wouldn't do it. It would benefit them in every way, because if they monitor it, they're gonna make money off of it. Because they're not gonna let small time guys and your neighborhood mom and pop store be the bookies on this. It's gonna be guys at the NBA taking bets, most likely online, maybe maybe through phone lines. That's the only way you could do it, to where and that's the way it's gonna be. It's gonna be an online phone line type of thing. But going back, like I said, the 583,000 people in Las Vegas alone, there's only about 20,000 in St. Louis alone. And that's just the city alone. And I know that a lot of people come from the county to games. A lot of people come from other states. But wouldn't it be fun if you were on a California trip and you could stop in Las Vegas to have fun, go see an NBA game, go see an NHL game, see some kind of spectacle, and then walk out to the nightlife? Because most games end about 10 o'clock at the latest. National Hockey League, they're pretty good about their time, except in the playoffs. And basketball is too. But so it'd be something to go see an NBA game, go see maybe LeBron play in Las Vegas, even though he's playing for Cleveland, but LeBron in Las Vegas. You know how hard the NBA would promote that? And people would show up and see it? And then you would have Kobe there, because it's the West Coast. It's most likely be a West Coast team, so you would see Kobe a lot. And that's what it'd only be over the past couple of years, but you got other guys in the West, the Steph Currys of the world. And who wouldn't want to go to Las Vegas? Like, it's great. Yeah, I can go to the Cardinal game whenever I want, or the Blues, or the Rams, or St. Louis FC, or any team thing like that, whenever I want. But if I could go see it in Las Vegas, that'd be kind of cool. Like, if I went to go to Las Vegas somehow and seen the Blues in Las Vegas, then I went out to the spectacle that is the nightlife of Las Vegas. That would get me going there if I had the money to do it. But you also got to worry about that if you're an owner of a team. Because are your players going to think the same way the fans are? And then you're going to get these people that are going to try, the mob types, they're going to try to get these players to not even care. Get these players to shave points, to have these old for 4 days, to maybe whiff on a shot or two, or not even try. So, it's that another obstacle that the owner wants to worry about when he's already got to worry about his players doing all this in St. Louis or Arizona or California or wherever they're at. So there's a lot of things to weigh here, both pros and cons, but I don't think it can happen until sports betting gets legalized. But I think once that happens, it's there. The Arizona Coyotes, If you're looking at the NBA, a team like Sacramento that's been struggling for a place to play, and maybe they're just waiting on that stadium to be built in Las Vegas. You don't know. The MLS has also been looking at places there too also. But you gotta weigh the risk with the reward. It's the risk as much as the reward right now if it happened today, or if it happened any day with the nightlife, the prostitution, the bookies, and things like that. Alright, we're going to take a break. We're going to start next segment off with the Hometown Rundown. That's next on the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Hello and welcome back to the Sports Blog on the Greater STL Sports Network. Robert Bowlesby here with you. You could tweet me at rbowlesbyjr. You could tweet the Greater STL Sports Network at Greater STL SN. And as I forgot to promote in the last break, you can find us on Facebook at the Greater STL Sports Network. Alright, let's go to the Hometown Rundown and start it off with the River City Rascals. The Rascals started a 4-game, 2-day series, double headers on both days, with the Rockford Aviators. The Rascals started their post-All-Star break on the road, and the first game was actually a continuous from June 25th. In Game 1, in the 8th inning, a home run by Danny Cannella, his 10th, broke a 6-6 tie and gave the Rascals the 7-6 lead. The Aviators tied the game in the 9th inning on an RBI single.
I wouldn't bet a corn farthing on him escaping. No, I wouldn't. Not a corn fart.
Sorry, I had a little technical issue there. Excuse me. After a home run by Danny Cannella in the 8th inning to give the Rascals a 7-6 lead, the Aviators tied the game in the 9th on an RBI single at 7-7. The Rascals, who were the home team, I'm guessing the first game because it says it walked off, but they did play on the road in Illinois. The Rascals walked off in the 11th on an error with the bases loaded on a hit by Hector Crespo. And Game 2 was only a 7-inning affair as the Rascals blew out the Aviators 10-0. Lucas Laster earned his first run of his career, going all 7 innings, allowing 6 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, and 6 Ks. Jackson Slade hit his 5th home run of the year in the game. Kern Reddle and Brian Hansen collected 5 hits in the doubleheader, and Danny Cannella and Jackson Slade each had 4 hits and also a home run each. Rascals and Rockford started another doubleheader the next day, Sunday, with the Rascals taking both games. The first one 6-4, the second one 3-2. The 2 wins and the 4 wins in this series runs the Rascals' record 30-24, 1 game out of first place. The Rascals were down 4-3 going in the 7th inning in the first games when they scored 3 runs in that final inning, with Josh Silver driving in the first run and Curran Riddell driving in 2 with an RBI hit to win the game. In Game 2, Joe Shano ran his record to 6-4 after the win, going 6 1/3, only allowing the 2 earned runs, 6 strikeouts, and no walks.
You need to take.
poor play, sorry. Oh, Zach Camorty broke a scorer's tie with a 2-run shot, his third of the season. The Aviators didn't come back to cut the lead in half on a home run in the bottom of the inning. But then Taylor Ard, who's been the king of kings for River City Rascals, hit his 18th home run, gave the Rascals a 3-1 lead, and they went on to win the game 3-2. The Rascals play again on Tuesday as they start a home series at T.R. Hughes Ballpark in O'Fallon against the Scattenburg Boomers. Alright, we'll move on to St. Louis FC as they play 2 games this week, going on a Canadian road trip. And the first one was against FC Montreal. And it wasn't a good defensive game played by St. Louis FC. And it just seems like at some points of the game they wear themselves out early. And I don't know what it is, and it seems like Coach Scully is getting better with just switching guys in and out, taking as much substitutions as he can. But they lost the first game in their Canadian road trip 5-2 to FC Montreal. FC actually held a lead, and they took in the 5th minute on a free kick by Brian Goal that was volleyed to the back of the net by James Musa. After a bunch of missed scoring opportunities for FC, Montreal took advantage of scoring 3 straight goals in the half, all 3 by Charles Joly for a first half hat trick to give them the 3-1 lead. Montreal then scored again to make it 4-1 early in the second half goal. FC tried to make a comeback as they scored in the 71st minute to cut the lead 4-2, but Montreal added another one late and took the 3 points for the win. And you've had guys in and out, a lot of injuries to guys like Charles Rankin, and then, as you see, an injury to James Musa, who comes back and scores in this game. A guy like Patrick Duty going up and down. You've had players go back and forth on the roster already. Another guy was injured earlier in the season and hasn't really got that much playing time is Brian Barklage. So you just got to hope that this team just starts getting healthy as we go down the stretch. And they actually have played very well on the road. Their problem has been at home. But they continue their Canadian road trip, going to the Ontario Soccer Centre to play Toronto FC too. And FC controlled the ball most of this first half. And they finally got one on the goal in the 39th minute, as Toronto got an own goal as a cross attempt by Nick Bibbs was knocked in by a Toronto FC defender to take the 1-0 lead. And they lost to Toronto FC earlier in the season, and you knew that the FC was going to go out there and play hard, and they really did. They controlled the ball most of the first half and did a lot in the second half. And Coach Scully, again, lots of substitutions, different guys than were the last game, and he's actually started to see what kind of maybe some of the other people have seen, with some of the guys wearing down, having to play as much with injuries, and then also giving them injured players a rest too to keep them fresh as the season goes on. Goalie Alex Kahn made 5 saves. That was his 3rd shutout of the season. The win improved St. Louis FC's record to 5-7-6, 21 points on the season. They play again July 25th at home at the Worldwide Technology Park soccer field against the Oklahoma Synergy FC. Now, just before we get into anything else, I want to Bruce Jenner was at the ESPYs this weekend and made a nice little speech and blah, blah, blah. And I was just playing around, playing on the Hulu, and started watching Family Guy episodes. And seen a little comment, and this popped up. And they said they did it before in season 10, and I didn't watch that one, but this is pretty good. This is Family Guy on Bruce Jenner.
Ugh, look, there's Brody Jenner. God, what a douchebag. I can't believe that came out of Bruce Jenner's vagina.
Bruce Jenner is a man.
No, Brian. That's what the press would have you believe, but he's not. Bruce Jenner is a woman. An elegant, beautiful Dutch woman.
So that's Family Guy's thoughts on Bruce Jenner back in season 7. Who knows when the heck that was from, but it just seems like I said it about The Simpsons with the Cardinals thing. You can always find something to where these TV shows pick out things here and there to prove the points. But we'll move right along to that, to weird news, as in Tequila, I guess it's Tequila, Oklahoma, an altercation started after a woman was aggravated over the Wi-Fi problems at her local Taco Bell. After having trouble with the Wi-Fi, Amber Lynn Hinson, 48, decided to cool off with a drink. But as she walked to the drink stand, she was intercepted by a group of teenagers in the way of the soda machine. She had to squeeze through the group of teenagers to get to the drink stand, and when she got agitated by the group, she spilled a drink on one of the kids. Hinson then allegedly waited outside for the kids with a 4-inch blade and challenged the group of teens to a fight. Hinson did leave without stabbing anyone, but was recognized after the cops placed surveillance photos from the Taco Bell on Facebook. Hinson was arrested and booked on assault with a dangerous weapon. And now this segment is going to be all about the bitches being crazy. We're going to have one guy in here. He's next. But that soda machine thing is kind of true. And it's kind of like the guys that sit there and foam their soda foams up, and then it foams back down, they fill it, and it foams back up, and then folds back, until they completely get the thing to the top, to the perfect goddamn top of the cup. And that's irritating, but it's probably just as, it's probably as irritating. You're aggravated, your Wi-Fi ain't working on your 1942 track phone. Not getting good Wi-Fi perception at the taco place. Kid, you want your Baja Blast Mountain Dew, and you can't get to it. That would affect, I guess that would affect me too, to where I would spill my drink and pull a 4-inch knife on a bunch of teenage kids at the Taco Bell. No, that's just tells you, over Wi-Fi. The lady was mad over the Wi-Fi. But okay, we'll go to the only guy story we got today is in Central Pennsylvania, and I said that state great. Police say a drunken driver crashed and ran away from the scene, but was later found nearby. Where was he found? Cops found 20-year-old Dacon Tate on a nearby farm roof, naked. He was arrested after Mr. Tate fell off the roof. Police say he faced drunk driving charges for first crashing into a speed limit sign and then into a mailbox. Tate continued the drive after the crash and then lost control of his car again, hitting an embankment for stopping on the street and running. And then, of course, he was later caught on the farm roof in Pennsylvania. So was this Amish country? Was he messing with the Amish? You've seen the Amish Mafia, right? Maybe they shot him off the roof. Maybe they got some kind of special beanbag to knock them off the Amish roof. Because that's where they are. They're up there in central Pennsylvania. That's where the Amish are. So, bad way to go if you were going towards the Amish parts. You don't want to mess with that Amish Mafia. Alright, back to the women. In Kingsport, Tennessee, a woman was arrested for using counterfeit money. When Pamela Downs was arrested, she told cops Obama made counterfeit illegal. She was arrested after trying to pass a glued-together $5 bill off at a gas station. She claimed she received the cash from another gas station, which made the officer look into the purse, where he then found a fake $100 bill with the back of the dollar bill glued on upside down. After finding a receipt for printer and copier paper from Walmart and Mrs. Downs' Walmart wallet, she was arrested. When she got to the jail, she said she read about the law that allowed people on a fixed income to print money. The article was a parody on a fake news website called The Skunk. when officers searched her home, they found between $30,000 and $50,000 fake bills. Now, when I first read the story, I could have swore it was in Florida, but the South is, of course, where all 90% of these stories come from, where actually all 3 of our women's stories come from today. Well, Oklahoma's not really South, but our next one's in Georgia. This one's in Tennessee, which isn't really South, but they consider it South, so we'll let them go with it. The South isn't, I guess, isn't really much geographically inclined. Maybe they don't teach that down there. But you really thought, this just tells you what drugs do to your mind. And you read the article on the skunk. It's like going to the newspaper, The Onion, or there was one yesterday about the Tool singer dying that was a prank website. But you really think that you don't make enough money, so go ahead and print your own money. And as much as you can. Don't stop. Just shows you what drugs do to your mind. Now this story is just messed up crazy, and I make light of tragedy, and I shouldn't. I do it all the time. And I'm probably going to make light of this story, so I'll apologize beforehand. But police in St. Georgia say that the girlfriend of former NFL player Buster Barnett kidnapped and killed his wife before committing suicide. Lisa Brown kidnapped Sandra Barnett at her home and then led police on a trace to cross state lines into Alabama. She then suddenly stepped in the middle of the highway and shot Barnett, then shot herself. Reports say that Brown was mad over a trip that the Barnetts had planned to take together. So, I guess that's like, I can't have him, you can't have him situation. Can you just tell the wife maybe, and maybe she didn't know about it, and maybe she'll leave the guy? And plus, he's an 11th round draft pick. How much money could he be making? And they don't have him 11th round anymore. He did play 4 seasons for the Bills, but there's other ways to go about this, isn't there? Does it make any sense to kidnap the lady and then just stop in the middle of the highway, leave police on a chase? And these kind of things have happened before. I think it was an astronaut lady a few years ago. The kid did the same thing, kidnapped, and was actually had like duct tape and shovels and all that in the trunk, and was wearing a diaper as she was driving, so she didn't have to stop to go to the bathroom or anything. This is the same kind of thing, except even worse. The tragedy actually happened. And I'm not trying to make light of it, the tragedy, but what kind of hormones makes a woman do that? I don't know. I know, like, men kill themselves over women sometimes. Not trying to make light of it. It's a bad thing. It's a devastating thing. But where does the chromosome missing or what when these people do these kind of things? And it probably could have all been resolved. You probably would have told his wife. She probably would have left him. He probably has some kind of money being in the NFL, some kind of pension, some kind of something to where this wife could run off and take and probably get all his stuff. And the funny thing is, in the Bronco that they were riding in, it was actually registered to Buster Barnett. And I don't know nothing about Buster Barnett. I didn't look it up. Didn't really care. This scene was a crazy story. Thought I'd mention it on the show. But just some of the things that happen in this world these days. Now, we're going to do something we've done it a little bit. But we haven't done it to the extent that I'm going to do it today. And that's talk a little WWE. Now, the first story I want to talk about kind of pertains to the weird news situation. Now, if you watched Raw a couple, I don't know, I think it was 2-3 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago. Brock Lesnar decided that instead of going to the ring to fight his opponent at Battleground that was in St. Louis, Seth Rollins, and his 2 cronies, Jamie Noble and I think his name's Joey Mercury of J&J Security, Lesnar decided to tear up their car. All for storylines, we all know that. So he proceeded to get an axe from Paul Heyman out of some random chest that was in the middle of nowhere. and proceeded to hit the car. But at one point he decided to tear the door off the car after smashing it all up. He then decided to launch that door across the arena. Now luckily this door split into some pieces, and maybe not luckily, because if it might not split into pieces, it might not have hit the fan. But after Brock decided to launch the door across the arena, part of the door hit a fan in the stands. Now, it appears that the fan is alright. He was reportedly checked out and wanted to go back and watch the rest of the show. But it just kind of sees the kind of intensity that a guy like that has. Wow, just think if that guy was on steroids or something. I mean, it would be something outrageous. Like, he might have launched that thing into the second row. But supposedly he hurt himself bouncing off a ring post. He hurt one of the wrestlers of the J&J security, broke his ribs by hitting him too hard. So maybe he maybe needs to tone that little stuff down. And maybe that's what, maybe he gets up on that kind of stuff. Maybe that's why he was such a good wrestler in Minnesota. Maybe that's why he was such a good UFC fighter for the little time that he was. And maybe that's why people like him. Maybe they like the intensity. Maybe that's why he's one of the bigger guys in wrestling over the past decade or so. But just something you really would never thought that you'd see. And the fan, according to all reports and stuff like that, isn't going to sue. But, man, just think of all the things you could get if you did. I mean, that guy's probably going to be able to go to every WWE event in his lifetime that's in or near his thing. He could call it WWE and get tickets to anywhere he wants to go. Now, I don't know how far that he's going to go. Now, I would go up 10 times. Car door hit me. And I would get everything I could out of it. But obviously a trooper, wanted to watch the show. I guess understood that things can and will happen if you're sitting that close. Even though if you see how far that guy launched the door, he launched that door. So I mean, you really can't blame it on. Maybe the fan. I don't know. And they went out and rushed the last few minutes of the show. There was only a few minutes left. So, but we're gonna get a little deeper into it. It's WWE Battleground, and I'm not gonna talk every match. Ric Flair's daughter wrestled in one. That was pretty cool. St. Louis' own, though, Randy Orton started off the night defeating Sheamus with the RKO out of nowhere. And this Kevin Owens and John Cena thing, I was playing around on Twitter and said, how many matches will John Cena jobber, which is the term for basically letting a guy win, Kevin Owens? And I kind of got my question answered. It would only been the first match. But it's kind of funny that they're starting to run Cena through these NXT guys, I guess to prove they can both wrestle. Because Cena was getting harped on by the fans saying he couldn't wrestle and he was a 3-move wrestler, blah, blah, blah. And now he's really doing a lot of top rope moves. He had the rolling powerbomb last night. He's been doing the bouncing off the second rope and doing the springboard stunner. And they just keep it interesting with the talking back and forth. Owens interfering in Cena's matches. Both wrestlers breaking in and out of their finishing moves of each other. Both of them doing each other's finishing moves. I mean, it's kind of the best thing. And I haven't watched it in a few years. I started watching it to get back in with my kid. And I'm not saying that I disliked it or anything. It wasn't something that I was watching. And the times that I did watch a little bit of it, it wasn't as interesting as it was when I grew up. Which I grew up at the wrong time. I grew up with the Stone Colds and the DXs and all that crap. The NWOs were 3 shows, wrestling shows from 3 different companies. Were badass shows. But, I mean, they don't really build a lot of storylines up that they'd keep for going for long. But I think this one should go through the rest of the year. It should be like in every pay-per-view they have a fight. Whether Cena loses, whether Owens loses. This is something they need to build on. And maybe he goes on to something else and Cena gets the beef with the next guy. And then for everybody's dream of St. Louis that went Lesnar and Rollins for in the end stages of their match, it looked like Lesnar was going to win the title when the Undertaker decided to come out. And I guess they call it a disqualification, but he choke slammed Brock and tombstoned him twice. So kind of cool for the fans of St. Louis to see that. And they show up in drones for this stuff. I went to a live event. I can't remember when. Took my kid to one of them live events that they have on the weekends at the Scott Trade Center. And I'm not saying it was packed, which it shouldn't be for just a regular live event. But there was probably a good 5,000 to 8,000 people in that arena. Now, I don't know if people knew they had a cage match the other night. People might know that. People, I don't know. I didn't look it up what matches they were having. I kind of just went and showed up because I got free tickets. But, you know, a lot of fans that grew up watching this stuff and probably that get involved in that kind of stuff probably were happy and kind of cool. And I mean, I was watching it there with my kid on the WWE Network, and I thought it was kind of cool to see him come out and get involved in the title match. You know, hasn't been around really since last year. Well, really, at the beginning of the year, WrestleMania, when he beat Brock, or beat Bray Wyatt. But sooner or later, we're going to get some kind of big show here. And I'm meaning WrestleMania. And maybe it's when we get the new football stadium, even though WrestleMania is kind of a bad time in February months. A little more in March, really. I think it's March 31st. It's still kind of cold here in St. Louis. So I don't know about getting it there. But maybe that opens up something. Whenever you start putting money back in the Edwards Jones Dome to turn it from a football stadium to a more of a convention area. And things like that. But, you know, St. Louis has enough gentlemen Hoosiers that would show up for this. And supposedly it was packed last night. And it looked really energized at times. And at times it looked like people were sitting there watching the 18-inning game before. Maybe a lot of the people came over from the 18-inning game and they were just worn out. The Cardinals were there. Michael Wacha was there. Jordan Walden was there. Matt Adams was there. They got shown on TV. So just something else to talk about. I don't talk much wrestling, and this ain't really the time to talk about sports, even though somehow I spent a half hour with the Cardinals earlier. But things happen. Alright, until next week, I'm Robert Bowlesby, and this has been the Sports Blog, and this is the Greater STL Sports Network.